Cool. So here we are. I am recording this event. So if anyone misses part of it, just send me a message. And we just have a lot of people coming in still. So, all right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about Beacon Gallery very briefly for those of you who may not know it, a bit about the show, about you two, our artists, Sam and Michael, who are here. Maybe give a wave if you want, Sam and Michael. We'll go on a quick virtual tour and then we'll have a conversation and some question and answer time, all within the space of an hour. So Beacon Gallery, we are in Boston, Massachusetts, for those of you who may not be from around here or know it. I opened the gallery, I'm the owner, Christine, opened this gallery in 2017. This is a woman-owned business, fully. I own and operate it. So we are a commercial gallery, but we do focus on social justice and community building, hence things like being able to offer the opportunity to people to donate to the Pine Street Inn through events like this. We also curate shows around social justice issues, show affordable, accessible artwork, and try to really make our community, make everyone feel welcome in it by presenting art events, working with artists from different regions and places in their careers. So welcome to all of you who may be joining us for the first time and to those of you who are returning. So Urban Landscapes, this is a show that's up through Valentine's Day, so you have a little less than a week to visit. It's a 4-artist show with Sam Belisle, Howard Feynman, Rosa Leff, and Michael McLaughlin. We'll be talking to Sam and Mike tonight. And this is a focus on how 4 artists translate the urban landscape into their own unique vision. And so it's some new perspectives on the modern American landscape of the 21st century. About Michael McLaughlin. And so Michael, here's the info you gave me. Hopefully I've translated it properly onto here. You can,
it's fine. Yes.
You can correct me if anything doesn't look right. I believe you spent your first 50 years in Everett, Massachusetts, and now you live in Peabody. Those are both north of Boston, for those of you not from the area. You're a graduate of not only Salem State University with your BFA, the Museum of Fine Arts School as well, and Mass College of Art, going for a trifecta of degrees there. And you've exhibited at places such as Van Ward Gallery in Algonquin, Maine, Salem State University, Harvard Ed Portal at Harvard University, and with me multiple times here at Beacon Gallery. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's, like I say, I'm not going to embellish further. I think it's fine.
On to Sam. So Sam, you're originally from Columbus, Ohio, and now you live in Boston, in Lower Alston, I believe, one of the neighborhoods. You have your BFA originally from Denison University and got that in 2013, and then also went to the SMFA, as it's called, which is now part of Tufts University. Same school as Michael McLaughlin, but you graduated in 2018. I'm also a jumbo, as they're called, but I got a different degree there about 15 years before you, Sam, in education. So you have shown at galleries and alternative spaces in New England and Ohio in group and solo shows, and you won the Faye Chandler Emerging Artist Award in 2018. You are the inaugural artist in residence at 30 Minutes for Lunch at Central. And then you are now opening a gallery in Newton, Massachusetts called Nearby Gallery with fellow artist Kel Rice, who I believe is on this call as well, where you're going to be providing opportunities for emerging artists, showing contemporary art, and offering art education. So that's a really exciting project as well. Congratulations. Okay, so now this is kind of the awkward moment because I really want to bring you all on a virtual tour, but what ends up happening is that I do that on my phone, which means that I am going to mute this and I am going to, you're all going to see my face on here for in a second. So Sam and Michael, I'm going to let you kind of like fill in the quiet for a second as I'm awkwardly doing all these things. And then I'm going to come back over and spotlight myself.
Well, right off the bat, after hearing what Sam's, his background, I want to go back and embellish mine. I got to throw in some more shows or something. I got to do something. to, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll fill this time a little bit, talk about the gallery. We're starting in Newton Center. A fellow artist of mine, Cal Rice, we got some support to open a space in Newton Center, a community we've kind of been a part of the last 4 years, working with people, doing community events and stuff like that. Our goal with the gallery is to kind of help with an issue that we found in Boston. We have such a strong institutional base in Boston, and there's a lot of great artists coming out of school. And the level of art that's being taught doesn't necessarily, match what you're seeing in the commercial galleries, and it's providing less and less opportunity for emerging artists. That's why it's great for people like Christine, who make it their mission to show emerging artists, because there really is not as much opportunity as you would think. So that's kind of, what we're going to try to do going forward is provide that opportunity, also provide supplemental opportunities so people can really focus on their art practice, helping them with work, extra money, things like that. So anyway, sorry, Mike.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Awesome. Okay. I just need to spotlight myself so you guys can everyone see me now?
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this around. So hopefully everyone can see the show.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Somehow I'm seeing picture in a picture, which is a little awkward, but I'll get over it. So this is our show. For those of you who aren't going to make it in before the 14th, that's why I'm doing this, so you guys can get or for those of you who live far away, here's your chance to see the work. This is what you see when you come down the steps into the gallery. We've works by Howard Feynman and 2 works by Michael McLaughlin. I have all of these on a presentation, so you will get to see them up closer. So you don't feel like you need to examine every piece of them right now. But Michael, do you want to say anything about your work in general and how you maybe frame your photorealistic paintings a little bit as I walk around?
Yeah, sure. Back when I was in school, it was in the mid 70s, late 70s, it was photorealism was really coming about from both East and West Coast as a reaction to both abstraction and minimalism. So at the museum school, it was a fairly popular style, and so I kind of sort of fell into it naturally. As far as the urban setting, it just seemed to be kind of a natural thing. I mean, obviously, if I grew up in the mountains, I probably would have painted mountains, but this is a landscape that I experienced, and so I started off initially doing paintings just of that, and then recently decided to add the abstract elements into it to just make it a little more dynamic as far as the effect of seeing through the surface with the highly detailed part, and then the abstract part, which is sitting on the surface, and have a little bit of exchange visually between the 2 elements, which was kind of the principle behind it. So
Thank you. That's great. Just as we're going around, these paper cuts are by Rosa Leff, and we've also seen some lovely photographs by Howard Feynman. I'm going to have you each talk more about your work. Here's one of Sam Belisle's pieces right in the middle here. Sam, do you have anything you'd like to say about this piece as I'm walking around, or do you want to wait until we're back sitting?
I mean, I can add a little bit. I mean, when I approached this show, I've always been obsessed with the urban landscape, and it's been a part of my practice. But I thought about it a little differently going into this show, and I thought of it more as a character, one that's experienced by actual people and then ridiculed by others, especially when you talk about how much we're using the internet and social media and how that defines people's outlook on things. So I wanted to approach it from that perspective of just thinking about it as not as just like a landscape as much as how we're defining the landscape through our actions.
Very interesting. So yeah, your work really kind of adds something different here because we have all these people and how they're interacting with the space around them. Can you say something, Sam, just briefly about the material, the support that you used as we're looking at it?
So I've chosen to do this series on oriented strand board for a few reasons. I actually have a personal connection to it. I've done work in the past on it. And the context used to be a little more focused on condemned and rotting buildings in my own city. But now I think they've taken on new meaning that, really point the finger at this time, which is a time where there's a lot of social unrest. And of course the pandemic, and a lot of businesses have had to board up for those reasons. But it also became a great opportunity for folk art and just visual communication of communities. So I wanted to reference that with the materiality of the piece.
Great, thank you. All right, we're just gonna finish up with this last wall here. The gallery is about 1,100 square feet. We have some storage in the back, but it's essentially like one big room. If anyone, when they're looking at these pieces by Howard Fineman and Rosa Leff, is finding themselves fascinated, as I am, feel free to go onto Vimeo and check out their artist talk from about 2 weeks ago. Here's another piece by Michael McLaughlin out of Charlestown. So we'll talk more about this work once I sit down back at the main computer. And this is, just as an aside, 2 pieces by Howard and Rosa that are collaborations. So this is a photograph of Howard's and then Rosa's paper cut of the same piece. So that's a really interesting combination. So just one more look around the gallery, and then I'm gonna go sit down. You guys can see where I've been sitting.
So I think I managed, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I actually managed to do that without getting any feedback, like for the first time, which is amazing. Usually I do that and you have like that and everything, and it's awful. So I want to kind of get into chatting about your work, Sam and Mike now. We talked a little bit about it. What I'm going to do is I just have a brief series of questions, and I'm going to go through and ask them to each of you, and I'll pull up your artwork as it seems necessary. But if you have anything that you want to show people as well, either behind you or that you want me to show from the show here, I'll put it up on my presentation. Sam, why don't we start with you? How did you get started as being an artist? What inspired you to become an artist?
I mean, honestly, I think it was my mom. She got her BFA in architecture, and she always had a creative thing. And then also my dad and his family big into music, so I was always kind of had the opportunity to express myself in a lot of different ways. But honestly, I kind of put down the art around high school, had other interests and not a lot of support in the public school system to pursue that. And it wasn't really till I went to college that I got back into it and realized that people actually, care about art. From where I grew up, there's not a lot of people buying artwork. Yeah, so, and then, I graduated and I got into the workforce and, wasn't sure if I was going to pursue art. I tried my best, but I realized I had to take the next step and kind of just get out of my comfort zone and come out here to New England and go back to school. And it's just been 100% since then. So.
Amazing. What about you, Michael? What I'm going to do is put you guys both, spotlight both of you.
Hey, here we are.
There you are.
Hey. Yeah, well, for me, I was like, the typical kid in class that could, draw and do things and whatever. And then went to school for it, right off the bat, as far as at the Museum of Fine Arts and then Mass Art. Actually, after graduate, I did work commercially for a while for a couple of big companies, and it was fine. It was, you know, it certainly paid the bills. But then, you know, things changed, and um, I kind of got away for a little bit, and then, you know, got back into it, and then tried to figure out what I wanted to paint, what I wanted to do, and again, back in when I was back in like I say, back in the late 70s, that was a style I was painting then. So obviously it picked up where I left off. And then what happened was it wasn't to me satisfying just to do a photorealistic image of a scene. I mean, it's interesting. They're nice to look at, but I wanted something a little bit more than that. That's how the abstraction came into the piece that I'm doing now. And I don't know how much the abstraction will overtake the realistic part or the other way around. So, but yeah, as far as it's, you know, Sam and I represent two opposite ends of the spectrum as far as generation, as far as, you know, so I'm just looking forward to the next piece, getting it done. Sometimes when I'm painting like things like leaves on trees, you know, I wish I was a minimalist. I could just do a couple squares of red or green and I'd be all done, you know, but, yeah, that painting, yeah, the painting you see now. Yeah. It's just, the trees took a little while to do, but it was, it's necessary, you know, to get the effect, the see-through effect on the picture plane that I'm looking to get. And the realism, it's not there just to kind of show off or what. It's the idea of I want to have the viewer get a sense that it's a very specific place that's important for the see-through effect. It doesn't, you don't have to recognize as being Medford or Charlestown or Everett or whatever, but it's necessary to have that level of detail to have that effect. And then the elements, the physical elements that are added, that creates it, like I say, hopefully a dynamic between on the picture plane between the two elements. And so that's it. Also, I want to give credit to my wife for taking some very good photographs that I use for a reference. So just want to put that in there now.
She's a talented photographer. So
Yes.
we're lucky to have her.
Yeah.
We have a question. Is that collage on the sides? So how would you describe the work that you add around your photorealistic?
Yeah. But what happens, how it works is that in one single day, I block out the entire painting. So for example, the fence line, the edge of the buildings, that gets blocked in very roughly, so I know where things are. And I generally build up and I block out the abstract part. I get the white off the canvas kind of a thing. And then what happens is that as the middle part of the painting starts to develop, it sort of dictates what the other parts will be like. And sometimes I try to reference this one here. I reference more personal things like this, personal photographs in there and things like that. Sometimes I reference art historical elements like the notion that landscape painters like the French painter Corot and so forth. I've used elements of his work in the abstract part of the paintings. Yeah, there you go. That's Corona's work. And only because there's down the bottom there on the Charlestown painting, just to sort of represent, you know, that's how landscape painting was being experienced by people who were looking at it as an art form. It wasn't like it was, they weren't seeing it directly in a museum. They were seeing it in a book, and sometimes it's black and white, and sometimes it wasn't reproduced very well, but they recognize that as, oh, there you go, there's a landscape painting. They recognize it as almost like an icon. So again, that was put in there to create a contrast and you know, some elements of hopefully a little bit element of surprise. You know, obviously the detail part takes the longest to do. Both parts take, I think, equal amount of thought, because you can't have the activity on the same surface happening and have it not at the same level of interest. Because if you do, then it's like, geez, man, why do you have this abstract stuff here? Why don't you get rid of that? Or the other way around, why are you boring us with all this detail of car bumpers? Why don't you just do the abstract stuff? So it has to be sort of, both require the same level of involvement.
Thank you. So Sam, what's interesting, I think, between your and Michael's work is that you both have elements of, in a way, pastiche. So you have different pictures that you've put together in your work. So if I pull up one of those, for instance, here, how do you put together your paintings?
Well, you know, this is a process I'm developing always, so it's ever changing. You know, I actually don't have a lot of background in painting as far as instruction, so I kind of just figure it out as I go. But what I've started to do recently that's been very helpful, I work from a lot of photographs. I've actually been taking the photographs, putting them into my iPad on Procreate and moving the references around and, you know, just to adjust the perspective and, you know, figure out what else could be interesting with the other images. And then I work from that reference.
Oh, cool. I like that. So you're kind of bringing in newer technology into, and then applying it back.
Well, it speeds up the process for me a little bit because, you know, I think I always approached painting with that, that stereotypical painter's mindset where I'm just gonna like throw it on the canvas and figure it out as I go. But then I realized that I never finish at paintings, so
Yeah.
I had to rein it in a little bit, get a little bit more specific of a process.
It seems like now both of you are planning in advance and then executing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. For instance, on these pieces, to actually make them archivable, you know, I had to put 3, 4, 5 layers of gesso just where you see paint. So, you know, it's a whole process of drawing first, then, you know, doing, you know, gessoing, sanding, gessoing, and then coming back and painting on top of it. So I had to plan it out a little bit. Also with the frames, you know, I built these frames for this piece. And so that was kind of built into that process as well.
Yes.
A lot more planning than I'm used to.
Sure. There's a whole process there. Now you talked a little bit about these 3 pieces. How would you say this work and your work in general, what are you trying to say with your work? Because I see some of your pieces behind you as well. Are these newer works? And
Oh, yeah, these are newer works. Actually, this is a collab with Cal Rice and myself, kind of just focusing on a, you know, standing in line for a grocery store. But my work in general, I tend to focus on, you know, my community that I grew up in, which is like a working class community. And I go in and out of that I do ethnographic portraiture a lot, and I'm a lot of times highlighting other creatives that I know. But then I also do other work that tries to have a little edge on it and allude to like my feelings of class dynamics in America. So I'm very much, you know, from that perspective, working a lot. So in that regard, this series is a little different for me because, you know, I'm obviously focusing on scenes from, you know, specific protests. But to me, it's all kind of, it's a complex issue that, you know, involves race, it involves economics, it involves white supremacy. And I wanted to try to represent some of that in this narrative while drawing attention to the pandemic and, you know, how we mishandled that and the mishandling of, you know, the Black Lives Matter protests, not on the side of the protesters, but on the media and government, obviously.
oh, interesting. Now, Michael, for you, what do you feel like your work is saying? Because you're mostly focusing on, I would say, pure landscapes, and you choose, I would say, very hyper local to the Boston area locations.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As far as with how I choose an image and what kind. I mean, obviously, I look at a bunch of different things, and something will strike me. But as sort of casual as the images look, they're very structured and they're actually adjusted. There are elements that look like they were part of the original photograph, and in fact, they're not. They were, you know, they were adjusted and manipulated by me to achieve a certain compositional element. Like this piece right here, you know, the classic X composition in the center. The house exists pretty much as you see, as does the car. But for example, the shadow's been adjusted. There's the tree line is adjusted to a V shape. That the original tree line went across, which I thought was kind of boring. So I'll make adjustments to on the realistic part, just to make it, again, from a formal standpoint, to make it just more interesting in that way. But again, the key thing is that you don't, the fact that that particular one, I believe, is either Somerville or Medford. I forget where, but it's just that it's important that you recognize it, because of the level of detail, that it's a very specific place and a specific time. And that level, when the viewer experiences that detail, will give the effect of seeing through the surface plane. And the abstract elements on the left and right here are sitting on the surface plane. So it creates this, like I say, this dynamic. And then, but also too, the abstract elements are abstractions of landscape, obviously, and the ground and sky elements. And this particular one has elements of referencing sort of trees with that swirly green kind of thing happening there. And again, the idea is on that it's important to have it on the same surface occurring to create that image and create that experience for the viewer. I think, again, if you were to eliminate the abstract elements in this piece here, I think it'd be an okay photorealistic painting, of a driveway, which nothing wrong with that. But that's not what I'm interested in kind of achieving. I want to go a little bit beyond that. And so again, and as far as, I changed proportions. This is obviously exactly, in thirds. Other parts, I pay attention to, for example, the classic landscape formulas of foreground, middle ground, background. Like on Charlestown Cow, the Charlestown painting, the composition clearly goes straight across, like right here. There's clearly the foreground, the middle ground, and the background, the sky. Everything is compositionally thought through and adjusted slightly, even to the point where, for example, you notice the cars almost always face away from the viewer, because and they're always parked. I don't paint things on, like, zipping down the highway, because I'm not interested in that. I want them to be part of the landscape as it sits, and interact between the different elements.
So interesting. Sam, do you have anything you would like to add on your work relating to all of that, when we talk about surface, for instance, and just that process? We talked a little bit about pulling focus here. We looked at means of communication. We haven't talked much about this piece, and all my photographs are covering the names of whose news. Maybe we can talk about this one a little bit. And you're muted, unfortunately, Sam.
Yeah. So yeah, this show, for me was, I honed in on media, and, I'm trying to say something about our need to, draw a line down the middle with our public. And, a lot of these news companies are benefiting from that, and profiting off that. And it's disgusting in that way. But I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that, there's a whole new generation that's consuming news in a different way. It's not with these big news. It's not CNN. It's not Fox News. It's more algorithmic. I don't know if that's the right word, algorithmic.
Good to me.
I just think, we need to be a little more conscious of and discursive of how we consume news, because, in a lot of ways, it's, leading to our downfall, as a community, I think. And obviously Trump kind of inflamed that. So we're kind of in a healing period, but still going forward, I think we should be diligent.
Sure. So we have to enter into a period of maybe critical thinking. Mm-hmm. Is part of what we all need to do. I think there is this sense of, if we read things or hear things, we've had this tendency to just maybe believe them in certain instances, but now we need to learn to kind of question everything in a way. or really think about things before we pass them on.
Mhm.
And maybe that same question needs to be said, or that same concept goes for things we see even,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know.
And then, you know, beyond that, I just thought this was a beautiful image, beautiful father-son image. And yeah, I thought it was a nice way to soften the intensity of the series, you know, because it's just kind of a nice, you know, wholesome image.
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. Um, well, why don't we stick with you, Sam, for a minute and talk a bit about, like, what do you think makes a good painting? Do you have any, what are the components that you think are necessary for, and this is just talking general, it doesn't have to be necessarily about your artwork, but I love kind of talking about the bigger art world in general.
Mhm.
Just thoughts on that sort of thing. What makes a good painting?
Well, I mean, for me, you know, from a technical perspective, it's always composition to me. I think that's because, you know, you grow up seeing paintings, even if it's just subconsciously. And these are like things that are practiced through generations and generations. You can look at a picture and it can feel right or not feel right. And I think composition, whether it's abstract or it's realism, you know, that's what's going to it's going to move your eye around and make it interesting. But as far as from a contemporary art perspective, um, I think the real question is like, what are you really doing? Are you just painting for the sake of it? Are you painting to say something? Are you, because especially at being like a straight white man, you know, there's been generations of straight white men making paintings. And, you know, you have to ask, are you just going to be another painter or is it something larger? So I guess what I think the expectation now in contemporary art is, you know, is there a reason why you're painting? If there isn't, like, you know, just take a photo or something, you know.
I love that quote. I love that quote. If is there a reason you're painting? If not, just take a photo. It seems like everyone's taking photos these days, right?
And I didn't mean that to say it's political photography, but what I mean is like, you know, there's so many ways to render an image these days. Why take the time? Why are you taking the time to paint it if there's not some, you know, purpose to that materiality? And for me, it's being inside the canon and using history in a way that's you know, important, because there is such a history, and it's a great way to mark our place in time. And for me, that's why I choose oil painting and stuff like that, is because it continues that legacy, and I'm attempting to shift that legacy a little bit.
I love that. And before I go on to Michael with these same couple of questions, my last question for you, which that leads directly into, is who are your inspirations? Are there a couple of painters or artists in general who you really do look up to and say, this is what I'm trying to do? These are the footsteps that I'm following in.
You know, I I had a lot of inspiration early on, you know, with Kehinde Wiley, um, and historically Copley. You know, I love the idea of portraiture being this thing that could, you know, first of all, when Copley made a painting, he would, you know, it was of the colonists, and you know, they would bring all their assortments of wealth, even though it wasn't that much at the time, just to make them seem of royalty, like the tradition of painting. And so I kind of like that, like, weird, awkward idea that you could just like paint someone's whole reality in one sitting. And I think, you know, Kehinde Wiley obviously put a spin on it and is talking about serious issues um, with his work, but you know, he's still able to highlight and embrace the history of painting. So I mean, he was a big inspiration for me, for sure.
Yeah, I love his work. It's amazing. So thank you. Michael, on to you now. What would you say makes a good painting? And you can feel free to go ahead and answer the second question within that as well, which is all about your inspirations. Just go for it. Give us your thoughts.
Sure. A while back, I read a book by an English author critic named Clive Bell, who
Oh, did we lose him?
Oh,
That was weird. Is he still around? I think he's gone.
he quit.
Judy, can you see your husband and tell him that we can't see or hear him? Oh, well, I think he'll be back in a second and we can hear more about that. Are there any questions for Sam as we're waiting for our technical difficulties to cease? If not, I always have things to talk about. Don't you worry. What I'm going to do is go back to sharing our screen and I'll just tell you guys a little bit about what's coming up at Beacon Gallery. You guys can just scroll through this and hopefully Michael will be back online in a second. Yeah, there's our Q&A. That'll eventually happen. So get your questions ready now. So our last day to see urban landscapes is going to be on the 14th. I'll be here from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. But really, if you want to come in another day, do make an appointment. I'm always happy to see people. I'm also happy to do virtual tours. So just send me an email or a direct message on Instagram or call, and we can set something up. On the 26th, so we've had a little bit of trouble with snow because of how much of it we've had here in Boston and New York. So we've had to push back the opening for our next show. That is going to be Guillermo Galindo's Sonic Biogenesis, Genomics and Mutant Jungles. That's going to now open on the 26th. I'll be here from 12 to 5. That's a Friday. And then the following week, which is the first Friday, I'll also be here. I'll be here from 5 to 8 p.m. Beacon Gallery will be open. So the gallery is always open on first Fridays. First Fridays happen throughout the year, 12 months a year. So do make sure that if you want to see the show in person, you get in here before, on or before the 14th, or get in touch with me. Okay, they're on their way. They had an issue with the laptop. Okay, thank you. So we have everyone, the McLaughlins are coming back. They will be back soon. Page here. Yes. So we can just look back through. I'm just going to go backwards through here so people can see the works. Up, and here we go. And here is Michael back again. I hope he'll come in and he can unmute himself and we can remember where we were.
I'm back.
You're back.
Hey. Can you see me or hear me at least?
We can see and hear you.
Wonderful. Sorry, a little technical difficulty. So
all good. We just went over the coming events and things like that here. So did some of the end of the show or end of this event housekeeping while we were waiting for you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're keen to hear more about your.
Oh, yeah. So getting back to the as far as what makes a good painting, good piece of art or whatever. And again, there was an English writer, Clive Bell, and he had a theory or a thought about it, and it was called significant form. And it's a simple idea of just you look at something, it could be a statue, it could be classical, it could be abstract. And there's something as you take away and you're no longer in the presence of the artwork, that you have this either recurring experience with it or remembrance of it. And that's a significant form that, and there's some, and it's sometimes it's not easily defined, but it's sometimes easily recognized. And you look back at, I've looked back at paintings that I've seen decades ago, and I remember first time seeing it, just being wowed by it, and sometimes very simple things, and sometimes just opposites of things, So it's that's as far as what makes a great piece of art, that has to have that element in there, I think.
Wonderful. And who would you say your inspirations are? I know you've referenced some of the photorealists of the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, the East Coast, West Coast kind of combination. You had painters like Ralph Goings and Robert Bechtel, and in the East Coast, you had Estes, who was doing this type of work. But on the abstract side of things, people like Rauschenberg and his collage work and how he took various elements together and made them work, even though they were desperate as far as their initial material and so forth. When they came together, they seemed like they made sense. So I sort of have sometimes Rauschenberg in mind when I'm working on the abstract part of things. And even further back with other painters. As far as painters and paintings, I gravitate hard historically to the Renaissance and the Baroque period as far as my favorite painters as well. Yeah, that's sort of where I sort of draw some of the imagery, some of the elements that are in the abstract part of the thing.
Great, thank you. This is going to be, I think, my last question before we go on to any audience questions, and then we'll wrap things up. But what's one piece of advice that you'd give to an aspiring artist? And Mike, we'll start with you, and then Sam, we'll go over to you after for this.
But funny you should ask that question. The same question was asked to me when I was doing the panel discussion at Harvard. A person who was working with the crew there asked that same question.
Oh, I just steal all my best questions from other people.
Yes.
I'm not original. I just
yeah, it's tough, and obviously with Sam and myself representing two different routes to that point, as far as both in age and career and so forth. All I can say is that you just have to do it, and just stop. Don't talk about it. Don't think about it. Just do it. Don't think about making money or living at it, because those are all things that'll stop you from doing it. Well, I'm not going to bother and this and that. So just try to have a vision. Try to find your significant form, an image that's going to be that to you, and then develop it. Try to be creative, and people may support you financially, and maybe they won't. And it's you just don't think of it in that terms. But I tell you the truth, if you're a real artist, like you're a real musician or a singer, you'll be singing or making music no matter what, because it's part of your nature. So just follow your nature and see where it leads.
I love it. What about you, Sam? What are your thoughts?
I definitely share that sentiment. You just got to do it. If you're thinking, hey, I'm going to, go into this field because I really like art and it's going to support me, you're wrong. I mean, you have to go into it with abandon, and realize that it's not an end goal. It's more of a lifestyle. And, you just got to put your artwork above everything else, besides obviously family. But yeah, I would just say, just like Mike said, just do it, and, push for that next project. It's going to come. You're going to build momentum. And when you do get momentum, you need to just keep pushing and don't let it die out. Because I think it will eventually die out, and then you're starting from scratch again. So, just keep pushing for the next thing and say yes to everything, as long as you're not compromising on your values. So.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop the share so we can kind of all be back together. I'm going to, all right, you both should be spotlighted again, or spotlit again. Do we have any questions for our two artists this evening? Before we wrap things up here, feel free to either unmute yourselves or to put something in the chat if so. I'll give people a minute to think about that. But feel free to kind of just talk over me as we're going. Because if not, what we're going to do is just wrap things up. And like I said, this show is open until the 14th. So a little less than a week. And then we have a new show by Guillermo Galindo that's opening on the 26th after that. And Sam and Mike, if you have any comments, any final comments or questions for each other, feel free to jump in as well.
I want to thank you for your efforts, Christine, because obviously, and I'm sure Sam agrees, it's tough with the circumstances we're dealing with now, and we appreciate the effort you do to support folks like us and what we're trying to do. So I just want to make mention of that. So
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Very kind indeed.
I feel the same way. I don't want to just repeat what I said. Putting all this together.
I beat you to it.
Sam's come in to see the show and brought people in about 6 times. So I know he's feeling he's been very supportive, making sure that there have been actual visitors for all this work that we've done to put things up. So very appreciative of that. Very appreciative of all the artists. Love the way the show has come out. And so it really is a pleasure to know that we've had 30 people on tonight. We had 30 people on the last time we did this. Really warms my heart because I know that we can't get the same amount of foot traffic in, but to know that people are attending these events, especially at the end of a long day, I know that we can all have Zoom fatigue. So really appreciate that. And I would just invite you all to spread the word about the show, tell people to check it out on Vimeo. These events are all there, and archived ones as well if you find that you enjoy them, or stop by sometime. Love to see you. So I think we'll probably leave it there. If you do have any questions for myself or for the artist, don't hesitate to reach out, and hope to see you online or in person sometime. Thank you very much, Sam and Mike. You're both incredibly talented. It's been awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for coming out for this. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you all. All right, I'm gonna end things here. Thanks. Take care all.